Welcome, everyone. This is our latest installment in our Taking Care of Our Own Health is on the Way Resiliency webinar series, presented live, generally the second and fourth Thursdays of the month. Mark your calendars for our next session, Warrior and Heroine Mentality, and whether that's a help or a hindrance in our industry, for Thursday, September 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time with Ruth Palmer and Laurie LeGrand. Today, we're excited to be hearing from David Olvera on ignoring the what-ifs post-mission. He'll be sharing with us what we can do about those nagging what-ifs before, during, and after we care for a patient. This reverberation of thought can get bottled up inside, build up, and explode. What if we're able to come away from this hour with new tools to implement our day-to-day? We hope our conversation today helps replace out-of-control thought, reprocessing with the coping acronyms that put you back in as much control as possible of your patient's outcomes. Reminder to our live attendees, if you have a question to pose to our speakers, use the Zoom Q&A tool provided when you think of it so we can be in the queue when we take questions a little bit later. As CEO of the MedEvac Foundation International, and on behalf of our board, staff, volunteers, and especially our donors, who collectively make all of our Taking Care of Our Own Health is on the Way programming possible, welcome everyone. We had almost 80 people register for this webinar, and we know that hundreds more tune into the archives on their own time. So if you're joining us after the fact, thank you for seeking this out. Now we'll have Jared Hughes, the Foundation's Development Director, introduce our speaker. Jared.
Thanks, Cameron. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to make a pitch for our Run to Help the Helpers. It's an annual run, walk, roll, swim, or golf challenge that started in May, and it goes through to the end of the year. We have 153 participants so far signed up for one of several events available for all abilities, from a 1-mile family fun run to a 1,000-mile cycling fundraising challenge from our board chair, Howard Ragsdale. Howard is more than halfway to his 1,000-mile goal and is working his way closer to his fundraising goal of $71,000 for our EMS mental health and wellness programs before his 71st birthday in November. I want to give a special shout out to our many individual donors and corporate sponsors to date: Metro Aviation, Lifelink 3, Apollo MedFlight, and CAMES. You can sign up to run yourself, support Howard's ride, and follow his progress at medevacfoundation.org or by Googling Run to Help the Helpers. Now to our speaker. We're honored to have Dave Olvera with us today. Not only is Dave one of our MedEvac Foundation International board members, he also serves on the International Board of Flight and Critical Care Paramedics. Dave is a subject matter expert with Air Medical Journal, has published in the National Registry, and writes items for the flight paramedic exam. A nationally registered paramedic, certified flight paramedic, and certified medical transport executive, Dave is Director of Clinical Research and Research Committee Department Chair at Air Methods Corporation. He is also Vice President of Research at one of our media sponsors, FlightBridge Ed, and has published multiple abstracts, papers, and related to pre-hospital airway management, resuscitation, and advancing air medical transport research. During his free time, he likes to barbecue, spend time with his wife Susie and their 2 sons. A self-described airway nerd, he holds the 2016 Tim Hines Award and 2017 ASNA Jordan Award for Excellence for significant contributions to pre-hospital medicine. Dave Olvera, we're thrilled to have you with us today and are grateful to you for your life's work and for your military service as a U.S. Army combat medic and for your dedication and philanthropy through MedEvac Foundation International. Dave, the floor is yours, but only after you tell us your favorite barbecue sauce or rub that we should all use for Labor Day barbecue.
Man, thank you. First of all, it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you, Cameron and Jared, both in the association. Barbecue rub. So my go-to rub is Santa Maria style seasoning, and the one that I use most is Suzy Q seasoning, and I make my own barbecue sauce. I make a cherry Coke barbecue sauce that's pretty intense and pretty awesome.
Well, being from the nephew of someone from Nipomo, California, which is right next door to Santa Maria, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
We're glad to have you. Take it away.
Thank you, Jared. Hi everybody, again, I'm Dave Olvera, and I'm going to talk to you guys about the what ifs that we experience, and kind of going to go through some of my personal experiences and just kind of things we think about in life. I'm going to preface this with there's going to be a video that has a cuss word in it, and I apologize, my technical skills aren't great enough to blank it out. And I'm going to be talking about myself, something I don't really usually do in a personal matter. So bear with me, is because a little bit of this is still emotional for me. So back in 2000, this was my life. I was finishing EMT school. I went to an EMT academy, which is an additional 200 hours of education and training. And I really became a family and learned about what the EMS family was. To my left in the picture is my previous wife, Tiffany. She was in the EMT Academy with us. I met her the second day of class. I was her squad leader, and I made the mistake of correcting her on her hair and telling her that she needs to put her hair up. And in true fashion, that set her off a little bit, and she was mad at me. So I already went in behind the power curve. A few weeks later, we were doing a class where we had to practice and staring at each other, and we can get closer and closer and closer without exchanging any emotion. And she kept making kind of this motion at me. And I was like, what is she doing? And finally, when she got close enough to whisper, she goes, "You have a booger in your nose." And I went, oh, geez. So I missed some of the naive things, but we went out later that week and we hung out every single day until I got deployed. And so it was a very incredible and very fun way to meet her. So life was good. You know, the joking to say, go to the Winchester and have a pint and wait for this all to blow over, you know? And so, you know, I was finishing my medic school. I joined the Army. I became a combat medic. I had graduated and loved every minute of it. I took every ounce of that education and training in. I became an educator and a trainer during the peacetime that I got to teach education to other soldiers. And it was pretty intense. And I apologize, some of the videos I'm going to show, the audio may be a little bit off, and I'm not sure, but we'll go with it here. So then something happened.
There was a loud crashing sound, and then there was a pause for about a split second, and there was like a scream or two, and then everyone just ran. Everybody, there was mass chaos. The smoke, the black smoke and fire. Patients of the event. 767 Boston. It's like a train that will rumble for maybe like 35 seconds. And then it was like this pause, and then boom, it was all the dust. It was black. I mean, pitch black. I don't know anybody could survive on the streets at that time.
You can see the black smoke billowing out of the side of the Pentagon. It continues to billow out and cover much of the skyline here along the area, drifting along the Potomac River, casting a haze all over the Pentagon area.
It didn't look like there was a plane at all. It was just obliterated when it hit the ground.
He told me he was putting a plan together that he and others were going to take back the airplane. And he said, you know, Dina, I think we can do it. It's up to us.
And we will strive now very hard to save as many people as possible and to send a message that the city of New York and the United States of America is much stronger than any group of barbaric terrorists.
All of the suspects right now that I know that the U.S. is looking at are in the Middle East. And frankly, we have to put Osama bin Laden at the top of the list.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
We've got to do something now to do it immediately. I mean, I'm entitled to some semblance of security, some semblance of rationality, and I think that all died in New York. I've been in the city for years. And, I I've never heard it as silent and as sad as I've heard it tonight. The city is in shock. Unless you're here tonight, you don't fight comedy.
So this was my 21st birthday. I partook in the libations of my 21st birthday, as I guess would be tradition for some. And I was abed and asleep when I got a phone call from my unit saying, Specialist Olvera, we need you to come in. And I kind of laughingly joked and said, haha guys, like it's my birthday. You guys are just playing a prank on me. And they go, no, we need you to come in. And I was still didn't believe it. And then I turned on the TV and I saw the second plane hit. And when I saw the second plane hit, I knew my life changed forever. The picture that you see hanging here is one I have hanging in my office that I look at every day. And I look at it to remember the lives lost and the sacrifices us as EMS workers and everyone around made those days. When there was the 11th days and years after. Some of us are young enough to not even know or recognize what happened that day that changed the United States forever. And I have to say that I couldn't believe that this happened. I signed up for the military and I knew that combat may be an issue, but I didn't know that it may be on our own home. There's a lot to take in at 21. There's a lot to take in and try and realize what was happening after a long night. And at the time I was staying at my parents' house, and my dad being a retired colonel, I walked out of my room and he was standing right there. He knew what happened, he knew the call. And I grabbed my gear and we jumped in his Mazda Miata and he helped me get to my unit and get prepared. My dad is my hero and I was very proud and knowing that he was there to support me for this. So as I said, life changed. So I went from having fun and being a medic and kind of teaching how to splint wounds and start IVs and do those fun things to, okay, now we have to get into thinking about combat. I was very fortunate that I was afforded the opportunity to go to specialized tactical medical training and to some SWAT training that really hadn't been out there in a public gesture yet. And in the bottom picture you can see here, this is us after we just raided a police station in the city of Bakuba, where we took over the police station and law and order in the area. We lived at that police station. We spent our days and nights at that police station. It was very interesting to make a police station your home. I had a lot of support from home. Again, my first wife was there for me right before we deployed up in Fort Lewis, Washington. I had the great opportunity of training with the 1st Special Forces group up there in medical training and learned combat medicine by shotgun, pretty much. I received letters from home and I received messages. And the picture below is the hospital staff that I worked with at Marion Medical Center in California in my normal daily life. This was overwhelming for me and had some things come into play. So that's where we look at human factors and task saturation. I love this quote right here. One of the first things to go when experiencing task saturation is communication. That's absolutely the case. A lot of things we can look back at and we can look at hindsight and say, if I would have communicated more, could this have been different? Again, that what if I said something different. The picture to the right was my unit and we're preparing to raid into a house. And we were all ready to go and going through our head the methods and modes and what we were gonna do to successfully complete the mission with the least amount of harm and getting the best for our safety for ourselves and others. So what is human factors? So the World Health Organization says it's the study of all factors to make it easier to do the work in the right way, to apply wherever humans work, and also sometimes known as ergonomics. But why is that important to us in healthcare? So we can see here that only recently we've acknowledged the essential part of patient safety as being this human factors. It's a major contributor to adverse events in healthcare, and all healthcare workers need to have a basic understanding of human factor principles. And so we use this in aviation, we use this in healthcare now, we use this throughout the world, and what we take from these is we build from them. What I mean by that is we look at the science behind it. So we look at how the mistake was made. We don't put blame, but how did this mistake happen? Was it the individual? Was it the system? Was it a component? Was it an outside situation that came in? And what happened to us? So then we look at why that was made. And we can see that the evidence tells us that most of the time, it was not the fault of the individual, but the system that was in place. And how do we improve that? How do we support that person to have a better opportunity? And this has really helped with looking at our adverse events, our near misses, our sentinel events that we've had, and taking a step back and looking at them on a non-biased point of view to figure out what we can do to improve that process. So what makes it complex for us? That deteriorating patient. Immediately our focus goes so deep into why they're deteriorating that sometimes we lose a parameter of everything else going on. And we get that tunnel vision. We have an uncertainty about the change in our patient condition. Something's happening, but maybe we don't have the resources to understand what's happening yet. Panic. Panic in itself just kind of sets in, and we start to just get that heart rate going up, our blood pressure goes up, and like what Mike Laria was talking about a few weeks ago, just having that level, just everything tightening in and losing some of that auxiliary focus. Our patient seemed well when we got to him. How many times have we had a patient that was talking to us, sitting up, and by the time we completed the call or we're getting off shift, that person was either intubated, having CPR performed, or possibly even passed away. And sometimes it's hard for us to fathom that this person was just talking to me and now they're not here. And that was really hard in the very beginning of my career because, you know, I thought we could fix anything. I was very naive. Going along the lines here, you know, the uncertainty of the diagnosis, but now the latest one is COVID-19. Wow, does that throw us for a loop where now we have to think about our current guidelines and the latest guidelines with COVID. Do we prone the patient? Do we sit the patient up? Do we put them on oxygen? Do we intubate them? All these additional measures. Not to even think about the basics of watching all these patients pass away and not being able to do something, or feeling helpless in these situations. That is a human factor and a stressor that a lot of us are dealing with today. And those that I've heard of from stories from like up in the New York area, just not having the resources or the availability, or when one of the hospital's oxygen system had an issue and having to disperse and send those patients out. What a intense situation and feeling. So I have a journal entry here. You can click on the QR code and it'll pull up the journal entry. And it says on average, there is contributing factors for each adverse event ranges about 10, there was 10 contributing factors. So the presence of these factors, particularly grouped together, made adverse events or near misses more likely to occur. And so as we look at those lists from before, and we see these, if we have one, we'll probably have another. And as they increase, we'll see there's more opportunities for us to have these near misses or these events happen. So let's talk about task saturation. So in this picture here, we have a task saturation is defined as the perception or the reality of having too much to do or not having enough time, tools, or resource to get it accomplished. In order to stay productive, you must figure out what's important to stay focused and what matters to be creative. Checklists, cross-checks, and mutual support. This not only happens with task saturation in the medical field, but in communication and in aviation and across the world. We use checklists. They were designed for aviation beginning around 1929 when we had an aircraft, a Boeing aircraft crash, because there were so many tasks to do that even the most experienced person could not keep up with the task without a checklist and have it crash. This is expanded now to sepsis checklists. This was expanded to procedural checklists, and now we have RSI checklists. So we have these where we have a command and response, where we have a mutual agreement discussing about what the situation of the patient is going to be in those cross checks to help us out. I have to give a big shout out to Mike Laria. I've known him for years now, and he is such an incredible individual that every time I hear him talk, I get so excited. And I'm so happy that we had him on our first presentation for the MedEvac Foundation and talking about things. So one of the situations he talked about was called Beat the Stressful, and how to work through some of these tunnel visions and how to prepare yourself. So again, if you click on the QR code with this one, you'll see a link that will get you to the podcast, as well as subsequent information from Scott Weingart on EMCrit that talks about Mike's information on the situation. So the first thing is breathing. Okay, if you notice that when you walk into a situation that's high stress, a lot of times we become tachypnic and we breathe really fast, and we're trying to figure out what's going on, or we're increasing our heart rate, and we're trying to like let all that adrenaline try and take place. And so what they've developed and what they've designed and what I use in the military is tactical breathing or square breathing. And so let's practice this. So the first thing here is you're gonna breathe in for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're gonna hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you're going to exhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Some of you tried that when we were doing it. I want you guys to practice it later and just give it a shot and just do maybe about 30 seconds to a minute of this square breathing and see how you feel. If you feel more relaxed and calm and focused. All right, we use it in the military. I didn't know at the time that we were using this and it would have such an impact today. You're gonna do some stealth talk. You're gonna kind of pump yourself up and really get yourself going and get the idea in your head that you've trained for this is what you do and you know, and so you're kind of giving yourself one reassurance, but you're also giving yourself that motivation to move forward. You're gonna do a mental rehearsal. So when I was in the military, we would rehearse in looking at the buildings or where we were going, and we would practice in our heads or in person on live fire ranges to practice where we needed to go to establish what objective we needed to meet. We do that in the same in medicine. And Mike talks about like putting a chest tube in. He's gonna visualize placing the drape, cleaning the area, getting the equipment, making the incision, opening the chest, placing the chest tube. He's gonna visualize every single step of that before he actually even makes the first incision. And again, I tell you, Mike is incredible. I am slightly jealous of his military career because it was the direction I wanted to go. But I love the fact that he talks about it and that he talks about different implementations that can help us as flight crew, as educators, as just daily walks of life. And the last thing there is you're gonna focus on a trigger word, okay? And so I'll let you listen to the podcast to hear what the trigger words are of Mike and Scott. But you have to have a trigger word that kind of sets your brain to go, okay? And so, you know, this trigger word is really important to help us understand that all joking or all whatever's going off is done, and now we got to focus on the task at hand. Okay, so what's that trigger word? So the question is, what was my word?
All units, irene. I say again, irene.
So a lot of people think because I was in the military and this movie Black Hawk Down that my word would be Irene. Well, when we were in the military, we did want to pay homage to this, to what happened in Somalia and to the units out there. And so we did not choose Irene. We actually chose Fiona. And the story behind this is that one of our leaders in our group was very much, had the personality and the stature of Lord Farquaad. And so we wanted to be able to kind of have a joke with it and have some light with it. And so you would hear Fiona is one of our words. Today, now when I'm out of the military and I'm working with a patient or I'm working on a call, I say excellent. And so the phrase excellent is really interesting. So for those of us that work with me, when you hear the phrase excellent, that means that something's going on, this is going to be challenging, or something just went bad. But I maintain a calm composure, and I go, that's excellent. So that for my partners and everybody around can hear this and say, oh geez, okay, we got to prepare for something going on. But everybody else around us has no idea. And I learned this from one of my physicians that was teaching me how to suture. I kept tying the knot in the same direction and I kept mixing it up. And I would get frustrated and go, oh man. And the patient would hear this. And so he pulled me aside one day and goes, hey, when you make a mistake or something, just say excellent. The patient thinks everything is fine, but everyone else around you knows, okay, he's working on something a little more challenging. And so to this day, I still use that. So if we're on the call and you hear me say excellent, look around because I may have done something wrong. So going back to my military career, we had an IED explosion. Again, I had an image in my head. I had gone through the process of what was going to happen, what we were going to do. We were going to go to this roundabout. We were going to make our way down the road, and we were going to go over and deal with this mission. Well, that changed. In the process of the roundabout, an IED went off. And people got hurt, and people got injured, locals, some of the military and my crew. And all of a sudden, my plan of action and my train of thought just got hit and went, hold on. And so my task saturation went from like a 4 to a 12 because of what happened. And we have that happen on our patients, right? They're sitting there and they're looking at you, talking to you, and they're like, hey, I don't feel very, and they roll their eyes back and they code. Our task saturation goes up. So nothing different than what's going on here. Okay, so how did I deal with this? I did the breathing. I gathered my thoughts. I made sure that the perimeter and everything was safe. The MPs that I was working with established a perimeter, and it started to allow me to do some work. I was able to help work on patients, stabilize some things, call in for help. I had my 9 line ready to go. I was calling MedEvacs in, and being able to get this established and taken care of while we were under fire and dealing with all this. Okay. And unfortunately, during one of the missions, we had Sergeant David Perry passed away. He was a mentor to me in the sense that he would go around and train us on our time off. He would sit there and spot check us and quiz us and make sure that we were mentally ready all the time. And he was a father, he was a husband, and an incredible, incredible soldier and family man. And unfortunately, during our deployment, he was hit with a roadside package that he was looking at, and someone remotely triggered it. So again, task factors, human factors, task saturation, all this coming together. Where does your brain go? What happens? How is it going down? How are you processing this? Who do you call? What do you do? Who do you call the ambulance? You know, I don't have a hospital right next to me, so I just can't, you know, bag him till we get there, or whatever the case may be. I have to be the hands, eyes, and arms of everything that happens with him until I can get him to a higher level of care. Okay. During this deployment, I would call home to my wife when I would go down to Kuwait or those different areas. And during that time, I went down to Kuwait to get some mail during one of our missions, and she didn't answer the phone. It was really weird because much like my kids today are stuck on their YouTube or on their iPads, she had her phone on her 24 hours a day waiting for my call. So I called my parents and I go, hey, I can't get a hold of Tiffany. And they said, oh, Dave, you haven't heard. Heard what? Oh, she's in the hospital. She's up on the floor. She was pretty sick this weekend. I'll go, okay. So I barely had a chance to get by. I hung up and I called the hospital where I worked at, and I called the ER and I said, hey guys, I hear Tiffany's upstairs. And it got really quiet. What? Geez. All right. What's going on with Tiffany? And they said, let's transfer you up to where she's at. And so she was so tiny. She was 23 years old, but they put her in the PEDS unit to give her some isolation, some privacy, and just an opportunity to just kind of be relaxed. And so I got a hold of her on the phone when I called up there. And she explained to me that she had some stomach pain and that it wasn't anything bad. And then the next day, it came back even worse. So she went to the hospital. They did a CAT scan, and they're going to be doing some surgery on her stomach to take out whatever was in there. But everything's fine. She was always optimistic that everything was going to be okay. I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. And then I spoke to my dad, and my dad said, Dave, I'm going to work on trying to get you home, just so you can at least make sure that she's taken care of. And then once things are done, get back to your unit and continue with combat. Again, my idol, my mentor, my dad took the reins and stepped in to help me get home. So there was multiple emails and messages sent, no, sorry, not emails, but faxes sent, and to where I was located. And the first one said that my wife was sick but guarded. Then it was she was sick but stable. Then it was my dad was sick, and then it was my dad going to surgery. And I think it was either 7 or 8 Red Cross faxes later. I was standing in front of the fax machine, and the fax came across and said, Dr. Centeno states, David Olvera's wife has terminal colon cancer. So I took that fax and I went into my commanding unit, and I talked to the leadership, and I said, guys, my wife is dying. Is there any way I can go home and come back once, I can get her stabilized? And they allowed me 10 days to come home. And I said, good, that's a good place to start. I can start with that. So I came home, and no celebration coming home, none of that. I landed in Riverside at the military base there. I remember my celebration was the first thing I ate. I had a In-N-Out burger double with animal style fries and a milkshake. And it went in and it went out. But it was the best meal I ever had because I hadn't eaten any of that kind of food for a long time. So I went, I got up there and I took care of her. And what did I do for myself? I started working a lot. I started picking up extra shifts. I started working for my unit. I got reassigned back to the United States. I started picking up shifts in the hospital. I was doing odds and ends jobs, one for financial reasons to help pay for some of the chemotherapy and whatnot, but also to keep my brain busy. Because as we all know, as soon as that moment stops and that time fades away, that's when things start to pick up in our head. And I had to maintain being positive and being very loving and proactive with Tiffany as she went through her therapy and through some of the difficult times. One of her clinical trials was so bad that it peeled all of her skin off her body, and we had to put baby oil on her throughout the day just to prevent the breeze and everything hitting her skin. It was very painful. When she would go in for her IV therapy, that was my time that I could relax. And so the nurses would always have a chair next to her that would recline for me so that I could take a quick 45-minute, hour nap and get back to work and what we were doing, but I would always be by her side when this happened. As time went on, it got more and more difficult for her to wake up in the morning. And we had some serious talks. We talked about, what to do after she passes. We talked about simple things as in, we recorded goodbye messages for all of her friends because it was inevitable that this happened. And at the time, some of my family members were a little upset that we did that. But now they look back at those recordings and go, I'm thankful that you did that. So then the day finally hit. I was playing Monopoly after getting off of work in the ER one day. And it was my friend Carlina and myself and Tiffany, and we all went to EMT school together. And I was winning at Monopoly. I never win at Monopoly. And all of a sudden I was starting to win. And I went, this is weird. And I look up and the board starts to shake. And I look and Tiffany's having a grand mal seizure. And she's just having the biggest seizure I had ever seen at the time. And in our discussions, she said, Dave, my biggest fear is that I don't want to suffocate. I don't want to choke. So immediately, as I saw her having these seizures and I saw her gasping and trying to get a breath of air in and all that, I looked over at my medic bag and I said, okay, well, I can intubate her until the fire department, everybody gets there. Or I could do something. I got to do something though. She can't suffocate. She needs to be able to take a breath. And so her jaw was clenched, obviously. And best thing I could do was I took 2 OPAs, I put them in my mouth and I put them in her nose. I did a jaw thrust and helped her to get breath. And she took a big, long breath and she was post-ictal. And I was talking to her as she was going down and she was, her breathing was getting more and more shallow and she was starting to pass. And by the time this happened, the fire department, EMS, and everybody had showed up at our house that they all knew her. And all of a sudden they went into test saturation. And all of a sudden they went into overload and they stopped. And so Carlina and I had a moment to take those breaths and do that square breathing and kind of gather ourselves. And we put her on the monitor and we put her, and we listened to lung sounds and we saw the agonal rhythm and we talked to the medical director and we decided to discontinue the resuscitation. It was hard to deal with. And I'll be honest that my friends and colleagues took me out again, choosing alcohol as a choice to hide the pain. Was it the best idea? Hindsight, not the best idea. And we do that a lot in EMS. We do that a lot in our lives because we live such high stress environments that we don't understand how to get rid of that stress. And so having all this happen, having been in combat, having all this pile up, I didn't know what to do. So I went out and had a few drinks. Then I had to bury my wife. And it was a very hard time for me. It was the day I was supposed to start paramedic school. It was the day that she passed away. And everything again changed for me. I dealt with it in the wrong ways. I became depressed. I had it all inside of me. I didn't tell anybody other than my close friends that, man, this kind of sucks. And then one day I was driving about a year afterwards, and I had seen the movie The Diary of Emily Rose. As I crossed over a bridge, lightning struck. And all I can remember is Tiffany seizing, the girl in the moving seizing, the lightning, IED. I pulled off the road right away. And I looked at my friends that were with me. And I said, guys, I can't be alone for a little bit. I need somebody to stay with me. And I did not have any suicidal ideations, but I knew that I couldn't be alone. And I stayed that way for a month. And I lived on the couch for a month. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to be proactive. I just let it build up in me and build up in me until I finally went and saw a therapist and talked about it. My first shift back working in the emergency department, my first patient was a 25-year-old female who was suffering from end-stage colon cancer and looked about 2 weeks away from dying. The charge nurse came up to me and said, Dave, can you handle this? And I said, I think I need to do this. And so I pushed forward and I took care of her. I gave her the best care possible. On the side, I talked to her parents about what I experienced, what I went through, the things that helped me, the things that helped with everything going on, and they were very thankful for it. And coincidentally, after she passed, she's buried right below where my wife is, or my first wife is. So I visit Tiffany and I visit her afterwards. So how do I move on? How do we move on? How do we move on from COVID? How do we move on from this whole process in our brain of everything going on? Well, we know that we use alcohol to numb things. Some people use other things. But we have to find things that are healthy for us, right? So running, therapy, being able to be free about discussing it. And we'll talk about a couple more of those things here in a bit. But one thing that helps out that one of my good friends, Rob Bryant, came up with was the RARE mnemonic. Okay, so RARE is react, accept, reassess, and engage. And I didn't realize it, but when the first patient I had came back in, I reacted and said, holy cow, it's Tiffany. And I totally went cold. And I went, hold on, it's not Tiffany. And then I accepted that this person needs my help. And I just can't stand here. I need to do something to help this person. I reset in my brain. I took some of that square breathing. I took some deep breaths, and I reset my brain and said, okay, you are good at being a paramedic. You are good at doing what you do. You're good at taking care of patients. This is why you're here, Dave. Get in there and help. Engage as best you can. So I re-engaged. Another way I look at it is in Top Gun. So for those of you who've seen it, towards the end, they go into a combat mission on the aircraft. He realizes he gets caught in a situation, he reacts, he pulls the plane out of the combat mission, he gets out, he composes himself, he accepts that he's in combat, he resets and re-engages in the mission. Same idea there. Take a moment, reset, and get back in. And when I was talking to Rob about this, and we were kind of going through things, something really stuck to me. He says, you need to acknowledge the emotion and why. Are you angry? Are you scared? Are you frustrated? Why? And try and process that. Using that sniper breath or that four square breathing, and then engage to the level that you can be fit to engage. It doesn't mean that you have to go all the way back in, but engage in a way that's safe and comfortable for you. All of us have had situations like this where we go into compassion fatigue, or we had burnout. So what we can do to help ourselves with compassion fatigue is we can talk about self-kindness. We're very critical. Anybody who knows me knows that I am harder on myself than anybody could ever be. I challenge myself all the time. Even if I do something in a great way, I challenge myself on how I can do it better. So we have to quit being harsh on ourselves and be kind and understanding that we've done everything we can possibly do. We've worked and trained for this situation and how we can make it happen. We have to have some common humanity. So rather than viewing these traumatic experiences as isolated, we have to kind of bring them as a part to the whole, and the whole human experience and what's going on. So yes, my wife passed away, but she was the youngest patient to ever have colon cancer at the time when she was diagnosed. There was a lot of clinical trials that she helped with to help see what medications work today. I have 2 friends right now that either themselves or their spouses have colon cancer. One has 4th stage colon cancer. And the therapy and the radiation and treatment that he has gone through, he is alive today and he is in remission with 4th stage colon cancer. I am thankful that Tiffany had one step in that process to help move things forward. So I look for those good things in life. My father just recently passed away because of COVID. I was very angry, and it was hard for me because I had to go from that healthcare provider, that critical care resuscitationist, and I had to turn that off and be there to be by my side's dad and to be a compassionate healthcare person. And so when I first went in, I was calling hospice every day going, here's his vital signs, here's what's happening, here's where we're at, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I think we should do this, I think we should do that. And they were very patient with me. And then finally one day, the hospice nurse says to me, Dave, you're not gonna fix him, and he's not gonna get better. You need to be comfortable and enjoy your time that you have with him. I could never have realized what she was talking about until it happened. I had to bring that humanity back in and enjoy those moments that I had with my dad and realize that what he has gone through to be able to come home being COVID-free before he passed was his absolute stature of who he was and using his strength to do that. Mindfulness, we have to have a balance of these emotions. Yes, we're gonna have painful emotions. We need to acknowledge them. We need to say, hey, I'm having a rough day today because no, I'm really sad thinking about my dad passing. We have to be able to acknowledge those publicly, candidly to everybody and have those conversations. Burnout versus compassion. What we want to do is we want to help ourselves recognize this. And I'm kind of going to go through this fast, but you can see a link on the bottom there will help you find this so you can look at it. But there's signs, symptoms, and there's triggers. There's certain triggers that happen that bring memories back to us. For myself, having triggers of certain things like certain types of crowd situations I don't do well with. I have nightmares, and they're usually triggered by a conversation or something that I had prior in that day. When I was diagnosed with PTSD, I said, there's no way I have PTSD. I'm not like what I see in the movies. And I realized that that's 1/10 of what PTSD is. I'm very fortunate and blessed that my PTSD does not have an anger side to it. I get sad, I get depressed, but I'm also very happy in the sense that now I know about it and now I can move forward from it. It took me a long time to say outwardly that I have PTSD. Actually, I posted something on a Facebook page one day and I got so many responses from people saying, Dave, I had no idea you had PTSD. And it's not what we outwardly show. We all know this, that sometimes it's internal for us. Sometimes, you know, we walk into certain calls or certain situations and it brings back that memory and we have to move forward from it, okay? So our brains have done this. We've done at least one of these things in our career as we've gone through. Where do I begin with this situation? How can I fix this? I know I can fix this. They haven't covered this, they didn't cover this in school. How do we MacGyver what's about to happen? I could write a book on this last call. Oh my, I can't help this one. Just when I think I've heard it all, this happens. This one screwed up, this one is screwed up, this is one screwed up life, whether it's ourselves or what we're seeing as a provider. And will this day ever end? We've said at least one of those comments in our head. How do we turn those comments into a positive? How do we take, this is one screwed up life, how do we take that phrase and make it positive and for the better? So sometimes what I'll do to people is I know they're having a bad day, I'll say, tell me one good thing. And they look at me like, what? I say, just tell me one good thing. It could be anything. You got up today. You brushed your hair. You came to work. You got a promotion. Tell me one thing good today. And that will start your brain and your body on the process of improving and thinking more positively. And just that one thing can help bring your momentum back to the positive instead of focusing on the negative. How do we talk with each other? It's not to each other. I'm not telling you what to do. I want to hear what's going on and provide feedback. So I'm going to take things in a perspective of what's going on with the person I'm chatting with. So I'm going to act as if viewing the world from their point of view, whether it's a patient, colleague, whatever the case may be. I want to look at it from their point of view. I want to see a different opinion because I've already have in my mind opinions already made. How do I look at it from a different opinion to make sure that I'm doing justice for what they're talking about? I have to stay out of that judgment. You know, it's 3 a.m. and we have the quote unquote frequent flyer calling us or the police calling us to do a transport because they don't want to deal with the patient. Or it's the same patient that we see over and over and over again. And how do we deal with this? I can't be judgmental because the one time I become complacent and judgmental and I decide not to do a 12 lead is when that patient will have a heart attack or that patient will have an adverse event or we will provide less than optimal care for a patient. So we have to keep that mentality going. Understand the emotions of the person that you're talking with. Reflect on your own experiences, maybe internally, process them so that you can understand the emotions and what they're going through. You're never going to be able to understand the emotions of the person you're talking to completely. So don't say, I've been there. You know, you say like on the next part here, tell them that you understand their pain. You may not be able to associate the pain, but you understand the direction of the pain that they're feeling. You know that you have empathy, okay? Acknowledging that you are dealing with the situation and you're listening to them is sometimes all people need, just to have somebody talk and to listen. And that was the hard part. So going back to my scenarios that I talked about, I never told anybody anything. I never said anything. I kept it all in because I'm a soldier, I'm a healthcare provider, and darn it, I need to be strong for everybody else. And so when my first wife passed away, I didn't cry in front of anybody. I didn't cry at her memorial. I didn't cry at the funeral. But when everybody was gone and all my friends went back to their normal lives and I was by myself is when I had my breakdown. And that'll happen. We have to be able to express those emotions, to be able to deal with them and work through them. Do we have all the answers? Absolutely not. Will it be a pill? Maybe not. Maybe it's just a lifestyle and a health change. We have to think about that. So the next question is, how can I get help? So we have some great opportunities. We have the Code Green campaign, and they look at advocacy and mental health. We have your company chaplain or your EPA program. I actually reached out to my company's EPA program when I started having more difficulties with my PTSD, and they were able to help me find an appropriate person that helps with these matters. A disaster distress line has been set up. The 1-800 number or the text number there is available that if you're dealing with a disaster, that if you need to decompress and talk to somebody, you can do it right there. And it's the National Health Hotline for crisis counseling. There's a crisis text line that's open 24/7 for healthcare workers. There's different numbers you can see there from the USA, Canada, the UK, Ireland, and there's plenty others because we're realizing that EMS, pre-hospital care, healthcare providers need someone to talk to. And the last one there is called Project Parachute. It's really interesting. It's a therapy session that was designed by a psychologist in North Carolina. And what she does is help get mental health practitioners to align with you that needs help. And she works on trying to do it pro bono. So if you're afraid to go to your company and ask, or you're afraid to take that step, reach out to one of these programs and you'll be able to have that moving forward. Okay? So with that, don't be afraid to ask for help. Okay? We are someone's best part of their worst day. We are also part of our worst day, and we need to be able to be there for each other or find help with someone that can help us. Okay? So again, I'm Dave Olvera. I'm the Director of Clinical Research, but I'm also a PTSD patient. And I'm okay with that from what I've learned and what I've shared today. If at any time you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll answer questions as I get them. I know we're going to do a little Q&A right now with the time that we have left, but please don't hesitate to contact somebody or ask for help. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. What a powerful presentation. There were several times there that gave me chills, and you certainly dealt with a lot. So thank you for sharing all of that with us today. We do have 2 questions right now, and this is just a reminder to everybody else, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat tool. The first question is, how would risk assessment compare with a checklist? Would the RA be useful?
Yeah, so you can do a couple of different things. So like in the flight world, we have a risk assessment tool that we look at in terms of the possibility of having an adverse event on that flight. A risk assessment also is a mental health risk assessment. Am I capable right now of going out and taking a call? Am I safe to do that in terms of patient care? So I unfortunately, I don't know. There is probably a risk assessment tool that we can maybe develop or design or is out there. And if somebody knows of one, I would love to be able to learn it and promote it and talk about it, because we have to do our daily self-evaluation before we walk out the door. Just like when I went out the door in the military to go do a mission, I had to walk out making sure that I was 100% ready to go and that I wasn't distracted. The checklist, in turn, kind of helps out with us when we're dealing with a situation at hand. So specifically the RSI checklist. And the example that I give with that is that just before I took a flight, my wife called me and gave me a bunch of discussion about our finances and where we're at with finances. So now I'm really frustrated about finances, and I'm thinking about that. I get in a call, and it's a 4-year-old kid who needs RSI and intubation. Am I focused on that kid? I'm not. So I need to gather myself. And in the process of gathering myself, as a safety measure, I use the checklist. And I use a command and response with that checklist to go through to make sure I'm hitting all the appropriate steps and we're doing everything effectively. That even if I'm at 80%, my partner needs to be ready to go and double check my work to make sure everything's okay.
Great. We've had a couple requests for the resources that you provided. Can you get that to us at the MedEvac Foundation, and we'll put them on our website and also email them out to everybody?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Now I know that you have a new member of your family that you just recently got.
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about your new family member?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, he is at the groomer right now, getting his his primming done. But one thing that I'm doing to help myself is I have a service dog, and so Joe is my service dog, and Joe is a English Golden Retriever, and it's through a program called Veterans Puppy for Life. And what it is he will be a certified dog to work with me, that we work together, and it's 38 weeks of training. So the first 8 weeks or so are basic command training, getting to know each other, bonding. He's big enough that we actually wrestle a little bit here and there, and it's an emotional part to me. It's not a support dog, it's a service dog, so this is actually a credentialed dog. Now, there are other 30 weeks or so, plus or minus, we go through PTSD training. And what he does is he learns what my triggers are. He learns the chemical changes that I have internally that I may put out. Like the other night, I was having a really rough night. It was my parents' anniversary, and I was thinking about my dad, and thinking about how fun it was every anniversary we had. And in baseball, my t-ball season had just ended with my son, and I wanted my dad to be there to see it, and just so many things. It's still very heavy on me. And I was sad, and I was sitting on the floor of the living room, just kind of bummed. And Joe came over to me, and he started nudging me, and he put his head onto my lap, and then he put his paws on my leg, and he was there just trying to give me some love. And I've been in situations where I'm overwhelmed, that I'm stressed, and he has stepped in or kind of nudged me like, hey, do you really need to be here? Kind of giving me that hint. And our future training will be that if a situation I'm not recognizing, because apparently I can't even recognize a booger in my nose, that he will bark one time to give him the understanding that something's going on, something is up. He will also potentially look at diabetes and be able to smell the change in the chemicals with that. My wife is a type 1 diabetic, has been one for 28 years. And sometimes, you know, in monitoring her sugars, they go a little low. Joe will be able to sense that over time as well. So I'm very fortunate to have Joe. And I actually, I'll give you guys the link to my Instagram page where Joe and I take pictures and we kind of talk about our day. I'm still technology declined, and so I'm trying to work on making a video log, like a vlog on YouTube. So that will be coming as well to kind of document the stories. And for us as EMS providers, this is great. This is an incredible opportunity for us to have this when we've been through some trauma, whether it's case by case, or in my situation where I was fortunate enough to work and receive Joe, and Joe and I work together in learning things. We have those opportunities. So again, I apologize, he's getting cleaned up, but we'll have some pictures, and it has been an incredible journey for me to deal with and to have happen.
Well, I can definitely testify that he is very, very cute, and I've enjoyed watching him grow up. And I have 3 dogs, which is too many, but and they're certainly not trained to do much of anything but sit and eat a lot. But even just having them, you know, and I've had a really stressful day, it really does make a huge difference in you know, my attitude and how I feel. And just to that point, on November 5th, we have Debbie Hasselow and Tom Ellenstein talking about sometimes you just need to pause, benefits of therapy animals, comfort animals, service animals, and the difference between them. So if you want more information on one of those programs, you can join us for that. So another question, Dave, should our companies add PTSD in our CRM human factors, and how could we do that?
Yeah, I think that would be great, because we've all been on those calls that haunt us, or we've had a near miss in a situation where maybe our aircraft had a hard landing or something, and we have to be able to process that. And PTSD is still relatively new. And I think that's an arm that we're forgetting about that we need to bring in. And as we're learning more and more about PTSD, as we're learning more and more about the brain and how we process and deal with things, and we're dropping that mantra of nothing can faze me and nothing can make me upset or sad, we need to find that balance and bring that in and be able to have that. And maybe we deal with in our morning checklist. Maybe the pilot asks us and says, is there anything right now going on that we need to work, that we need to discuss? And maybe it's not public what you want to say, just say, I'm having a sad day, or I'm having a rough day. Are you able to function? Yes. Maybe adding something like that, or adding a conversation that would be HR friendly, of course, but being able to have that and have that understanding in the checklist that here's one situation we need to maybe consider. You're on mute.
Thank you. I do that so that my 3 dogs don't disturb us for these webinars. Not a question, but we've had several, big thank yous to a great guy, and so lots of I love this talk, and so thank you again. I want to say that we really appreciate it, and I know I've really enjoyed working with you on the foundation board, and I'm excited to work with you more, and again, to watch your journey with Joe. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Your presentation was, it really, tugs at the heartstrings, and you've certainly been through a lot. And, I hope that you, along with Joe and your family, have some peace moving forward. So thank you again. And thank you to everybody who joined us. And just a reminder, we do record all of these webinars. They are available after the fact on our website, medevacfoundation.org. So please go there. And if you know anybody who could use these resources, please, share these webinars with them. They're all free resources. Our goal is really to provide tools that people can use to really help with things like PTSD. So thank you so much, and everybody have a great day. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.